one of the revelations following Nigeria's 2015 general elections is the fact that every Nigerian wants to know what the law says. Regardless of political ideology, religious leaning, ethnic group, or educational qualification, Nigerians just want to know what the law says. And so whether we're talking about the question of the legality of a Senate that hasn't been inaugurated by Nigeria's new President Muhammadu Buhari going ahead to conduct an election to fill the seat of a Senate President, what exactly does the law say? Or whether in the face of a dwindling economy for the Federal Republic of Nigeria and a constitution that prescribes that the President shall appoint a minister from every state of the Federation, now 36 states in all. Should the President go ahead still to appoint 36 ministers when it is obvious that the nation can't afford it? Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajitumobi, and my special law series titled, What Does the Law Say? My host today will do justice to all the questions on the law that I have. Is a principal partner with Bolaji Ayorinde and Co., senior advocate of Nigeria since September 26, 2005. He's a notary public, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and he's active in legal practice. He was called to the bar in 1986 and remains the chairman of the 16-member board of the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria, a member of the Nigerian Bar Association and International Bar Association. So, join me after the break as I count down 60 minutes with Bolaji Ayorinde, senior advocate of Nigeria. Welcome back. Welcome, Mr. Ayorinde. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that you had National Honors, OFR, that's Officer of the Federal Republic. I thought it wasn't legal enough, you know, beside your SAN and your NBAs and your IBAs to mention. But it is important to you, isn't it?
I would say so, because the others are professional, and this is like from your country.
Right.
And again, it's special to me because at the time I was Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of Council of Ladoke Akintola University, and I was there for 4 years,
Yes.
full tenure. And I was very surprised when somebody called me up from the presidency to say, oh, we found your name in some list for national honors, and it appears you'll be giving OFR. So, of course, I made my investigations and
Yes.
I'm like, where is this coming from? And I discovered that the Students' Union
Yes.
at the university had made the request as far back as 2011. So
Wow.
this now came in 2014, and a lot of those students at that time are
Yes.
still my friends.
Till today.
Till today.
So you weren't a mean lecturer then?
I was quite friendly with the students,
Yes.
because I came in as Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of Council,
Okay.
which is mainly like Chairman of the Board
Right.
of the university.
Yes.
But again, I encouraged the Vice Chancellors, the two that worked with me,
Yes.
to please allow me to have access a bit to the students, because really and truly the university is for them.
Yes.
They're the ones that we are there to serve. And I found my interaction very, benefiting to even me at that time. So I tried to enjoy myself with them.
Yes.
And I'm happy I still have a relationship with them.
That's
you.
great. So you are an officer of the Federal Republic. I've always wanted to know, does that come with any perks? I mean, do you get a check monthly or yearly from the government when you have national honors?
I hope not. I hope not. We are all screaming about the cost of governance.
Yes.
And if you add that to the problems of Nigeria, then the country will collapse. So it's just a recognition.
Yes.
And maybe at best you get to the airport and you have access to the protocol lounge,
Okay.
which sometimes doesn't even make your life easier, right? But it doesn't come with anything, yes, except that it's just a recognition.
Right.
I'm very happy with it that way.
So I wanted us to start with this statement that you had made as chairman of the board of the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria. You talked about legal aid not being charity,
Yes.
but a fundamental human right.
Yes.
How can you rationalize that?
The major problem with governance and the polity is access to justice. And access to justice anywhere in the world can be very expensive. That is why the state must make a deliberate attempt to give the ordinary man, the man on the street, access to justice. And that means that you have to subsidize the justice system, which is much, much more fundamental than subsidizing oil.
Yeah.
Because you need to give everybody a sense of belonging. If something happens to that man, that woman, it does not have to check his pocket first.
Yes.
Before approaching a lawyer, before approaching the court, before getting his rights to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So when we came on board, that was the first thing I said, that look, legal aid should not be charity. It should not be, we are trying to help them.
Yes.
It is fundamental. It is a right thing. It is inherent. So we went straight ahead to make that point, and everything we have done in the last 3 years has been towards that.
Yes.
That whatever happens to you, you have a right to the justice system.
And if anyone is watching us now
Yes.
and would like access to legal aid,
Yes.
what is the way forward? How do they get that benefit?
Legal aid offices are all over the country.
Right.
Every state and practically all the local governments now. All you need is to open up the site. And where people do not have access to technology and all that, ask around. There is hardly any lawyer that does not know about the existence of legal aid
In their state.
in their state. So all you need to do is ask. I have this problem. I cannot afford this lawyer. Ask any lawyer. They'll point at the legal aid office and say, go there. If you are qualified and you fit in the criteria,
Yes.
you'll be helped.
All right. Now, one of the reasons I started this series on what the law says is that after the 2015 elections,
Yes.
it became obvious to me that a lot of people want to know what exactly the law says, not the interpretations given sometimes by political office holders.
Yes.
So I got a list of things that I thought you could provide answers for the benefit of my viewers and,
Yes.
and everyone else. First of all, you've been following events politically. You know that a Senate president has emerged. Now, there is a question about the legality of his emergence. Some people say that the president ought to have inaugurated the Senate before the Senate members could sit down to elect their principal officers. Is that true, or what exactly does the law say?
Well, I think it's actually the other way around. If you look at the standing orders of the Senate, it is senators-elect that elect their leader or their leaders.
Okay.
It's the other way around.
So there won't be senators-elect if
Yes.
the Senate has been inaugurated.
That's right. So once you have elected them, from all the evidence available, the president did send a letter that come on this day at
Yes.
10 o'clock and start your business. That is the effect of the president's letter. So the senators go there as senators-elect and follow their standing orders and elect their leaders. And that is done.
They don't have to wait to see the face of the president in the Senate
No,
before
it's
they
not
do
necessary. You see, we must begin to also appreciate the doctrine of separation of powers. The National Assembly as an institution
Yes.
is a branch of government on its own.
that. It's not beholden to
It's
the
not-
executive.
It is not at all. In fact, for the president to come there, is usually invited. He doesn't say, look, meet me there.
Yes.
And you will see that there was a rumor or reality of some meeting
Yes.
to be held somewhere else with the president and some senators from a particular political party.
Yes.
If the president had all those powers over the National Assembly, the president will call for the meeting inside the National Assembly and say, please meet me in this hall.
Yes, inside the
National Assembly. Then when we finish there, then we can go into the main chamber for the business of the day. But it doesn't work like that. Once he has sent the letter,
yes,
then the business can start.
Right. Okay.
So I think what we just saw was more of political maneuvering.
Some people more experienced in the Senate rules.
I should think so. I should think so.
Okay.
You know, but you know, they should sort out themselves very quickly so that we can
move on.
Yes.
And one of the points you've made now about separation of powers also brings to the fore the fact that many Nigerians think the president has limitless powers, you know, as a fallout of what has happened in the Senate. So does the Nigerian president have limitless powers? Are his powers restricted in any way? Is there a book that lists what he can do and what he can't do?
We have a written constitution, and there are powers that belong to the president. They are listed in the constitution. There are many, but they are not all in all.
Right.
And I think the mentality of Nigerians thinking that the president is all in all,
yes,
is also historical and cultural. We will see that many Nigerian societies developed from traditional rulership. There's a Kabiyesi somewhere,
yes,
there's an Emir somewhere, there's an Igwe somewhere that everybody bows to.
yes,
And everybody will go and solve their problems. And after the traditional institutions were wind down, we had the colonialists, and it was in quote, the Oyinbo man that was like God.
yes,
And everybody looked up to him to solve their problems. Then we had a political experience where Nigerians took over from colonialists and continued to behave like kings and queens. And from there, it's unfortunate, we moved into military dominance.
yes.
And I remember as students on 1st of October, on Children's Day, we'll be dressed up to go and march at the stadium, up and down, and salute the military governor and all that. So you see, it's a cultural and a background thing. But thank God for democracy. Now we're beginning to evolve since 1999. Even in 1999, we had a president who was coming from a military background, and his nickname was Baba. So it's this father figure thing that gives us that mentality that the president is all in all.
Yes.
And that now waters down to the state government level where Mr. Governor is like an emperor.
Within his state.
Within his state. You know, he runs things and he does whatever he likes most of the time. But these are offices with constitutional powers, and that is evolving now.
Yes.
We are beginning to see that now, that the executive, they have their work cut out for them. And you have countries that don't even have written constitutions, and they carry on, they know their limits. Now that is where the courts become very important in this dispensation. Wherever you think there's an infringement of authority, of rights, then you run quickly to the court.
And what about those who would say they don't have a belief in the courts because justice is either delayed or it's denied? What would you say to those people?
I would beg them to have a belief in the court. In Kenya, when there was some dispute after the elections, people were settling disputes with cutlasses and machetes. We don't want that here. So that is the only safe place you can go. It may not be something that is resolved in 24 hours, but it gets resolved, and that makes us a more civilized set of people.
A lot of noise was made about this. 2 major security meetings held by President Muhammadu Buhari, and the absence of the vice president at those meetings. I can't say for sure that he was locked out, or if he got there late and the meeting had commenced. But I'm just looking at what the law says about the vice president attending a security meeting with the president. Some have argued that if the vice president is a replacement for the president when the president is indisposed, do they both have to attend? Isn't it on a need-to-know basis that the vice president will be invited in?
It is not an issue at all, because constitutionally, the vice president does not hold his office at the pleasure of the president, but it performs functions at the pleasure of the president.
You have to explain that.
So even though
Yes.
there is an office of the vice president recognized by the Constitution, that office functions at the pleasure of the president.
In other words,
It is what the president tells the vice president to do that he does, like what the president tells other ministers to do. So really now and
Yes.
truly, this is where it is important for the president and the vice president to have a very good working relationship. And these issues are coming up because of the way we have evolved politically.
right.
Particularly in this dispensation where we have several parties
Coming together. Yes.
So there is mutual suspicion somewhere, and each time they don't see the vice president with the president, there is a group where the vice president has evolved from,
Yes.
screaming blue mother.
Where is our man?
Where is our man?
Yes.
And there's no constitutional basis, because you will look at presidential system. Let's take the United States for example.
Yes.
It is President Obama that chose his vice president himself. He looks at the talents at his disposal, available, and he says, oh, okay, I need this older man who has been a senator for many years,
Yes.
who knows the in and out and the workings of Washington,
Yes.
to be by my side. But in this case, our president is giving somebody, now happily for me, is giving somebody who I consider one of the best.
Yes.
Yemi Oshibajo
Yeah.
is accomplished in my field, and is a gentleman, is well respected, very cool-headed pastor. So I hope that with all those attributes, he will be able to work very well with the president. So it really depends on the relationship that they build together.
Yes.
But because his functions are strictly at the pleasure of the president.
So is there a case to be made then for the Constitution to perhaps allocate specific portfolios to a vice president to avoid these situations we see all the time about deputies being redundant? Even within the states, we find deputies are redundant as well, except of course the chief executive gives you something to do.
I think it will be a dangerous proposition to have constitutional powers vested in the vice president. There's only one presidency, so we cannot have somebody claiming that these are my powers.
Yes.
And we live and work together in the same house. It cannot work.
There can only be one captain.
There can only be one captain. So what we need to do is to have a situation whereby even if we have a coalition of parties, we allow the president to choose himself
Yes.
amongst the talents available. We do not force anybody on him. If we force somebody on him, then we have to pray that they are able to work very well together. But when you allow him to pick and choose his vice president, that will solve that problem. When former President Obasanjo fell out with Alhaji Atiku Abubakar,
Yes.
the office of the vice president became practically redundant. And that's a situation again coming from where you have a situation where the vice president begins to believe that I'm here by virtue of my popularity or anything. So we should leave the president to choose his vice president, to choose his ministers. And I'm happy that President Buhari seems to be towing that line. And I'm happy that he has the support of Nigerians in towing that line. And that is why it's going to be easy for him to do. The politicians are, even where they're kicking, they're kicking quietly.
Yes. Not loudly.
Not loudly, because they know that Nigerians will prefer a situation whereby the president chooses his own team, so that he will be responsible for that team. If they succeed, we clap for him and say, well done. If they fail, the buck stops on his table.
Join us again after the break.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
Angela, that's a great question.
Great question, Angela.
Angela, that is a very great question.
That's a great question.
Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah, very good question.
That's a good question.
This is an interesting question you put.
60 Minutes with Angela. Gain answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajitumobi. On my hot seat today, Bolaji Ayorinde, Officer of the Federal Republic and Senior Advocate of Nigeria. I did well there, didn't I?
Yes.
Right. I just wanted us to clear up one matter.
Yes.
So in your opinion, the elections in the National Assembly, the election of the Speaker and his deputy, the election of the Senate President and his deputy, are valid and legal in your opinion and should stand?
In my opinion, I think it will stand in court. If you look at this standing orders of the Senate, I think it is order 3.
Yes.
Which says that senators elect may elect. So it is not even compulsory that when you become a senator elect, you have to be there.
May.
Yes.
Makes it optional.
It's optional for you. I think some people chose not to come on that day.
Without 51 senators participating there, some people are looking at it as a kind of disenfranchisement. After all, those 51 people represent some Nigerians,
Yes.
and they haven't been allowed to speak. I'll just tell you what my friend Femi Gbaja, who also contested in this house, said. I don't know about the Senate. Nothing happened in the House. We had an election. It is different from the Senate. People were deprived of their fundamental right to express themselves and vote. End of quote. So that preventing people from exercising that fundamental right, what value does that have on the final results of that election?
I have a lot of respect for Femi Gbajabiamila. I think he's a fine gentleman.
Yes.
He's very well intellectually endowed, and he's a patriot. He has spent a lot of time working for the good of this country.
Yes.
And his opinion is very important. However, I do not think that anybody was disenfranchised. There was a letter written to the National Assembly that please convene and start your business at 10 o'clock
Yes.
on a particular date. And if you look at the standing orders of the Senate, right, the word may is used with regards to going for that particular event. So you may choose
Not to attend.
not to attend. It is a different thing if you were barred from entering the National Assembly or you were given a wrong date. But you had the date, you knew the time. So it is your choosing not to go, because really and truly the business of the National Assembly, I would think, is much and above over the business of the PDP or the APC.
Calling a private meeting.
Well, you can, but that is the consequence of such a meeting.
Yes.
At the same time, there's no difference between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock.
If you say that the standing orders use the word may,
Yeah.
which means you don't have to go if you don't want to.
You don't have to. It's
Would it make
optional.
any difference to you if the Senate President had not garnered 59 votes out of 109 senators, which was the majority? Perhaps if only 49 people voted, for instance, not up to half of 109 senators, would your opinion still remain the same?
Well, my opinion is strictly legal, and I do not want to give an opinion on conjectures. You see, politicians have their way. If all of them had been there, anything else could have happened.
Yes.
Perhaps the other party, PDP, could have said, oh, we have 49 votes. Why don't we throw in our block votes and vote for one of us?
Yes.
While these other people share their 50-something votes. And simple majority, that will have been it.
Yes.
But what politicians will do and what they will not do is beyond our realm. Because there are different parameters. They work overnight, talk to themselves, lobby themselves, and they do it all over the world. I will restrict myself to the legal angle, which is, was it valid? My answer would be yes. Whether
will it stand in law?
Will it stand in law? My answer would be yes.
And of course, it would go to show how legal it was, because the next day, Senator Saraki was swearing in the senators who were absent the previous day. So,
that is their president. They know. It's more of a party problem.
Yes.
And that is something that Nigerians have done very well with regards to that crisis.
Yes.
We have clearly told them And this is not a matter of whether it is APC or PDP.
Yes.
And I think it used to happen a lot, even during the PDP days. I remember when now Governor Tambuwal emerged, and there was a bit of crying here and there within the PDP circle, and Nigerians told them clearly that, look, listen, this is not our problem. That is the internal party problem. Go and solve the problem.
Yes.
And I think we're telling them the same thing again, that yes, okay, along the line you didn't get something right, but next time get it right between yourselves.
Yes.
Nigeria has a Senate president. Let us get on with the job.
Now, let's go to the appointment of ministers and commissioners for the states. We know that Governor El Rufai has reduced his commissioners by half. There is talk that President Buhari will not be appointing a heavy cabinet, as we're trying to cut down on governance. And I'm looking at section 147, subsections 1 to 3, which talks about appointment of ministers of the federal government. The use of the word shall in that section to me means that stricto sensu, it must be done. But in the light of dwindling economic fortune, will it be an impeachable offense, for instance, if the president insists that we cannot afford 36 ministers? I will do with 15 for now. Maybe after a year or 2 years, bring in another fresh 15, and that way he can rotate ministership around the 36 states. Could the Constitution have intended us to do something when we obviously can't afford to do it?
I think the framers of the Constitution were looking for a situation whereby every part of the country has a sense of belonging. And you see, the problem does not lie in the written word. The problem lies in the implementation. Now, you will be surprised that in the UK, they have over 50 ministers. You have minister for secondary schools, minister for primary education.
But do they have an army of aides?
But they don't have an army of aides. That is just the point. In Nigeria, for example, I hope we will begin to see a situation whereby cabinet meetings with the president will be restricted to the Minister for Defense, the Internal Affairs Minister, the Secretary to the Government, and the Foreign Minister. Those are the people that need to meet the president on a weekly basis or twice weekly.
Yes.
We do not need the Minister for Health to see the president every week in a massive room. You see that Federal Executive Council room?
Yes.
It's like a ceremonial room where you meet foreign visitors.
Yes.
No, that is not what a cabinet meeting should be like. And we shouldn't use the word lesser, but because of their function.
Yes.
The Minister for Health, it is okay if he comes in to brief the president once a month.
What's the difference with the minister and the Minister of State?
Yes.
Is there a difference?
There's really no difference, but what is all this job creation problem. So you now have every minister having special assistants, special advisors, hangers on, and the office becomes a problem. The president is under an obligation to appoint ministers from every state, but is not under an obligation to appoint all of them at the same time.
Aha.
So if he says that, look, my priority for now,
yes,
and it appears that the priority for the president for now, in the last 2-3 weeks that he has come on board,
yes,
has been the security issue, because the president has not really spoken up till now about economics and job creation and other things. Yes, they may have their plans,
yes,
but his immediate approach is towards the security issue, particularly the Boko Haram insurgency.
yes.
Fantastic, no problem about that. So if he's going to appoint a minister, maybe by now he says, I'm going to appoint XYZ as my Minister for Defense.
That's a crucial ministry.
That's a crucial ministry for him. And he does that and he carries on. Then he says, okay, I must have a secretary to the government, I must have internal affairs, I must have finance. And he does all that. And it takes his time to deal with the others. You see, why we have this cabinet mentality, and again, is the political pressure and jobs for the boys.
Yes.
Yes, the boys need jobs, but let these jobs be real jobs. And I'm happy that the president has surprised them, you know.
He's a man full of surprises.
Yeah, that is auguring well. I think Nigerians are really loving it. You see, because
You can't predict.
you can't really predict. About 3 weeks ago, people were going about with all sorts of lists that these are the nominees from this state.
Yes.
And that is not what this country should be about. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
You know, let everybody calm down. Let us look for real work and do the real job. We don't need a cabinet of 40 ministers meeting every Wednesday.
Yes.
You find out that by Tuesday, by midday on Tuesday, most of the ministries, the work stops because the minister is preparing for cabinet meeting.
Exco.
For ESCO.
Yes.
That's right. And that takes the whole of Wednesday. Then Thursday morning is trying to look at what happened at ESCO.
Yes. And then it's Friday is the weekend.
And Friday is the weekend. It takes off from Abuja. So it's effectively run his ministry for maybe 2 days in a week. That cannot work.
Okay, so those who are saying,
Yes.
Mr. President, no, the Constitution says you shall appoint ministers from every state
It doesn't say within 1 month.
at the same
It
time.
doesn't say at the same time. So if I'm the president, I say, yes, I've seen the Constitution, I shall do so.
As long as every state can taste ministership
That's
within
it.
4 years.
Within my 4 years, I will do so. Okay, I've seen about 5 people now. They come from 5 different states.
Yes.
Don't worry, for other portfolios, I'm looking at some other names and I want to take my time. And the ministers you appoint now, if you appoint let's say 15 ministers,
Yes.
they can oversee 2-3 ministries.
Combine ministries
Combine
together.
the ministries together. There is the Orosanye report, which I hope that this government will implement. You know, we have to cut down on the costs. If we don't do so, well, already the consequences are beginning to show.
We're seeing
The
them
states
now.
cannot pay salaries. There was a governor the other day who threw up his arms, said, I'm frustrated.
About 18 states.
About 18 states, yes. Particular state governor has not paid for 8 months. I mean, try to imagine your organization and you don't pay your staff salary for 8 months.
Yeah.
If they are still with you, they are actually looking for how to steal your money. So it's a big problem. You see, we must look at systems. You know, people are being prosecuted currently for, I think they were CBN staff,
Yes.
for failing to destroy money. Who does that? I'm sorry.
Is it in the law that governors must nominate ministers to the president?
No such law.
It has just been convention?
It is not even a convention. It is a practice that should be discouraged. But you see, it also flows from we are the ones that worked during the election.
We helped you get
We
there.
helped you get there. So we are the ones that spent money, whether legitimately or illegitimately. So we need to be the ones to tell you who to appoint. So they are, in quotes, godfathers.
Yes.
That is the problem.
Is there anything preventing a chief executive from appointing ministers or commissioners from an opposition party?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, a close example is the new president of the ADB, Adesina. Our president supported him, even though he was a minister under the former administration.
Yes.
You take the best from everywhere to run your administration. We must build on the fantastic transition that we have had. And one thing you will give President Buhari is his constant acknowledgement of that peaceful transition. He even said it at the AU meeting recently,
yeah.
and everywhere he has been. You know, because you see, it will help us from this winner-takes-all mentality. And again, help us to also understand that elections are not do or die. It will help us to understand that you don't have to sell your houses to run for election. Because after the election has come and gone, if you lose, that is the end. And if you win, it does not mean that you will recoup your investment.
If that was the aim.
If that was the aim. Because the man that has lost may be called upon to come and retain a position if he's very good. So it's very good for the polity, and we should salute the president and also salute the former president. They have shown very good example. That is the way we should go.
Join us again after the break. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask, you get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Bolaji Ayorinde, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Now, is there a significance, the office of the Attorney General, that is mentioned in the Constitution? He is the only minister that the Constitution identifies and gives him a section for himself. Section 150 says there shall be an Attorney General of the Federation who shall be the chief law officer of the Federation and a minister of the government of the Federation. Break that down for us, because it looks like not only is he Attorney General, he's a chief law officer and he's also a minister. Are these different functions?
The Attorney General wears basically two caps. First of all, is a minister appointed by the president to serve the president's political end. Political end in this particular circumstance is about delivery of good governance. To use our parlance here, dividends of democracy.
Right.
That is one cap. The second cap is the legal cap, being the chief law officer. The Attorney General, once he's appointed, becomes the chief legal officer of the country, and it becomes the first lawyer.
First prosecutor?
First prosecutor in everything. It's like that in many climates, because governance and constitutionality all evolve from law. In fact, we had spoken earlier about the office of the vice president.
Yes.
So unlike the vice president, the Attorney General, either of the federation or the state, is even better protected under the Constitution because he has specific functions. For example, it is only the Attorney General that can issue what we call nolle prosequi.
I was going to go there. Why would he? And, you know, how can we guard against it being used not judiciously?
Yes, in an abusive situation.
Yes.
Yes, you see, an Attorney General must look at all the circumstances of the case. And again, it is not a personal decision. It is a decision taken within the ministry. And that, look, this case, we have looked at it. And we do not think we should carry on with the prosecution of the case.
Yes.
He's the only one that has that power. And that power exists in most constitutions all over the world. In that, look, maybe something has happened and the situation has changed drastically.
Yes.
And there may be a need to put a closure on something. And it's not a power that is applied, it's very rare.
Yes.
Very rarely applied. Even in Nigeria, you can count how many times that it has happened in the 50 years.
Yes.
So it's not something that they exercise like that.
Can it be reversed if the Attorney General says, I want to discontinue the case against Angela, for instance?
Yes.
Can that decision be reversed by anybody else?
Not even the president. So that is where the power of the Attorney General is. It's a very, very powerful position. That is why, again, presidents must be very, very careful as to who occupies that position, that office.
Is there a reason
Yes.
then why, of all the ministers,
Yes.
the Attorney General is recognized specifically by the Constitution?
It is, again, historically and culturally, governance is an offshoot of law.
Right.
In putting together the structure of a country, your first major concern is the legal bit. That is what binds everybody together. That is what binds and holds the society. For example, you introduced me as a senior advocate of Nigeria.
Yes.
You will see that when you are appointed senior advocate of Nigeria, it's an offshoot of what happens in UK, where people are made Queen's
Counsel, yes.
And that is why it becomes an issue in the newspapers. When fellows of the West African College of Medicine are appointed, it is really celebrated as much as other professions like engineers, architects, even in your profession. But you now find out that the senior advocate thing is a state thing, sort of. And what it means, at your swearing in, you swear allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
As a senior advocate?
As a senior advocate. So it is a big responsibility. You can be called upon by the president at any time to take up an appointment, maybe to head a commission or to
prosecute a case.
To prosecute a case, because you have a tag of Nigeria following you all over. So your conduct, your disposition it's a big responsibility. It's not just for the dressing up.
Yes, and it's not just for your family members.
It's not just for your family member. You are senior advocate of Nigeria. You become Nigeria's property. So you now elevate even the position of the Attorney General.
Yes.
Far and above that. It has historical background. It's good for the country.
Yes.
At least you can hold some people responsible for certain things. Yes.
So it's important then that the Attorney General must be a senior advocate. It goes without saying?
Well, the convention now is to pick a senior advocate of Nigeria, but in the past we have had attorneys general that they are not senior advocates, but I think they also get elevated when they take up that position, at least at the federal level.
Now, I wanted us to look at federal and state executive bodies. I've been following the story in one of the states of the South region where the governor of the state dissolved the State Independent Electoral Commission and the State Judicial Service Commission. He says based on the recommendations of the House of Assembly. Now, looking at Part 1 and Part 2 of the third schedule of the Constitution, federal and state executive bodies, my question is, are these bodies not creations of the Constitution? Can a state government, or any government for that matter, just dissolve them without recourse to the Constitution?
Most of these actions are wrong. If a body or an office has what we call statutory protection, in order for you to dissolve or terminate, you must go through the Constitution. There must be reasons stated. Is it for misconduct? You must show the particular reason, and it's not just the reason according to you. It must be clear.
You can't say they're not performing well. These bodies are not performing well.
You cannot say that. You must name instances. Again, it's a fallout from what we have been used to. You come in as a governor and you are quickly looking for jobs for, in quote, your own people.
Yes.
Then you start dissolving boards without due process and all.
Yes.
We have so many cases in courts at the moment, in different parts of the country.
Yes.
Where such boards are challenging their dissolution and all that.
Do they have a leg to stand on?
No, they have two legs to stand on. And I'm sure that gradually these governors will begin to learn that you don't do those things for political expediency. But it is wrong.
It is wrong.
Yes.
Who would normally advise a governor, for instance, that what you're doing is legally wrong? I'm asking that question because sometimes it's very difficult to know to which side the Attorney General is leaning.
Yeah.
I always thought the Attorney General was for the benefit of the people.
Yeah.
But it would seem sometimes that the whole aim of the Attorney General is to protect the back of the Chief Executive.
That is why the Attorney General wears two caps. One is a political appointee, a minister or a commissioner.
Yes.
Two is Attorney General, first law officer. Now, you have to combine the two caps very well. And you have to let your governor or the president, in the case of the Attorney General of the Federation, to see that in performing your duty as Chief Law Officer, I am also protecting your back. Because I must not do things that will make you go into conflict with the people. So, I will advise you, if you are going to dissolve these boards, if you wish to investigate their activities, go ahead. If they are found wanting, it will be clear to the people that you govern that they are found wanting, then
These are the steps
these
to
are
take.
the steps to take.
Yes.
But don't just wake up one morning and say they have not been performing. And that is why, again, any sensible governor, any well-meaning president must appoint a lawyer of substance to be Attorney General.
When you say a lawyer of substance,
Yes.
not a hungry lawyer,
Well,
is that what you mean? Because
I don't know about using the word hungry,
yes.
but what I mean, you must always look for somebody who has experience, somebody who can be respected, particularly amongst his peers, somebody whose advice that you'll be very, very glad to take
Yes.
because it will help you. And that is without any form of disrespect to any of my colleagues, both inner and outer bar. Yes.
Okay, so give us your opinion then on the suspension of the former CBN governor, Lamido Sanusi. At the time, a lot of people were arguing, the debates were raging about the propriety of suspending him. In fact, some people said that his tenure as CBN governor was tied and he couldn't be fired by the president, while some thought the president can hire and fire.
The government should have been a bit more savvy politically, because I think that his tenure was about to run out anyway.
Yes.
So it was unnecessary. It was apparent that the man had fallen out with you. He had raised issues of wrongdoings at the NNPC. You had gone ahead to set up an audit and make your audit findings public.
Yes.
And look, listen, what this man says is rabble-rousing.
Yes.
And these are the facts. They meet facts with facts. Then man was about to leave anyway, you know. So don't wield any big stick against him.
At that stage.
At that stage, it was unnecessary.
On a final note and on a lighter note, you know, I read where you said your father deliberately sent you to a lonely village in the United Kingdom because you were rascally. You know, but coming to your chambers now and seeing you here, there's no rascality whatsoever about you.
Are you sure? I had gone to Government College Ibadan in those days, and you know, those schools were modeled after the boys' public schools in England.
Yes.
In fact, Government College was modeled after Harrow Boys. You know, I mean, for a long time, their instructors, their teachers were British. Government College was a place where, at the gate of the school, you dropped your toga of anything. So whether your parents were billionaires,
Yes.
whether you were the son of the governor or a top civil servant, or whether your father was just an artisan, at that point, you all become the same because you wear the same things. There were regulation dresses. It was more like a military camp. After Government College, I proceeded to International School Ibadan for A-levels, and suddenly I became very free. So I think maybe some of the rascality had been holding down while I was in the O-levels started to come out.
Yes.
And I was so determined to go to either University of Lagos or University of Ife, because in those days it wasn't really fashionable to run away to anywhere. You know, Unilag.
You stayed here.
You stayed here and did everything. Amongst your peers, you are also like, oh, are you going to Lag, Ife, Unsuka, Amadu Bello, Benin?
Yes.
You are watching where your friends are going, where your girlfriends are likely to end up. And suddenly I get home one day and the man sits me down. It's late now. He was a chief judge in his time. And he says, look, you have to go somewhere. And I'm like, where? Oh, you're going to England. And I'm like, oh, that would be nice. You know, I thought it was like a holiday thing, not knowing that the man had fixed me up in some school. And I eventually ended up in England, and I thought, okay, this is London, let me make the best of it. And he says, no, you're not staying here. Then he takes me to this village. There's only one shop in the village, which was also the post office. And the woman in the shop was about 79 years old. All she wanted to talk about was missing cats. And, you know, so...
Were you the only black boy there?
There were few, yes, there, you know, Nigerians came to that school.
Yes.
And I think Nigerians like me then,
Yes.
who needed to be taken out, we are put there. And
Siberia.
Sort of, but I survived it.
Well, I think your father would be proud of you today.
I hope so.
Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Yes,
Thank you.
very interesting talking to you. I enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
I'm Angela Ajitumobi. Thank you for watching.